Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Make It Smart Hub Diversity and Inclusion webinar, delivered by the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre. Hello, my name is John McLennan, and I'm an Innovation Manager with the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, based in Inverness, covering the Highlands and Islands and the North East. Before we get underway, I'd like to highlight some housekeeping points to help the webinar run as smoothly as possible. Firstly, the session is being recorded today, and the presentations will be available following the conclusion of the webinar. All participants will be on mute for the duration of the webinar, but I do encourage you to ask questions throughout. To do so, click on Questions in the control panel, type in your question and press Send. We'll try to answer as many in the Q&A session at the end. Your feedback and opinions are extremely important to us, and we will note each and every question, and if we don't have time to answer them today, we will endeavour to incorporate them in a future presentation going forward. There are also interactive polls displayed on your screen in between each of the segments today. Please answer them, and we can display the results for everyone to see during the webinar. This will also help inform the direction of travel for future events. In the background, I'm delighted we have Danielle, who will make everything run smoothly. And finally, in the spirit of good event management, as we used to do when we were face-to-face, there are no fire alarms planned for today, but if you should hear one, please make sure it is your own before vacating the building. And please note there may be exits to the front, to the sides, and the nearest exit may be to the rear. The construction and manufacturing sectors are a key source of business research and development, and they continue to make a huge contribution to the Scottish economy and the Scottish Government's growth agenda. The construction and manufacturing sectors in Scotland contribute a combined 55,000 businesses and employ over 330,000 employees, many in highly skilled jobs. Both sectors underpin Scotland's economy, providing housing for Scotland's growing population, developing the transport infrastructure, making a significant contribution to the sustainability of the built environment. Scotland has always been a nation of creators and makers. Our manufacturing and innovation and expertise continues to be a critical part of our economy, supporting over half of Scotland's international exports. A successful, vibrant, diverse and advanced construction and manufacturing sector is critical to our long-term economic recovery and success, creating jobs, driving innovation and growth, and boosting productivity and well-being. I want to briefly introduce you to the CSIC and what it does to drive forward innovation in construction. The Construction Scotland Innovation Centre is key to innovation in the built environment. We are a beacon of innovation for the built environment. We are also responsible for ensuring the sector changes to be made to be more sustainable, relevant to society's changing needs, and has the best economic outlook. We are one of 7 innovation centres in Scotland, supported by the Scottish Government, the Scottish Funding Council, Scottish Enterprise, and Highlands and Islands Enterprise. One of our most valuable assets is our connected ecosystem. We link together industry, academia, and the public sector. What we have achieved to date, just pick out a few highlights: 355 projects supported, 3,953 jobs safeguarded, 70 new business models, 66, I think it is, master's students supported. We support the built environment to achieve net zero through carbon innovation. Our work revolves around 4 key themes that we see as being key to delivering net zero carbon in the built environment. These are digital transformation, advanced manufacturing, building sustainably, and the theme of today, culture change. We do this through our connected ecosystem, collaborative projects, our innovation factory and future skills programme, using our connected ecosystem to engage industry and innovation, working on collaborative innovation projects with industry and academia and the public sector, giving industry access to a range of advanced equipment in our innovation factory, and we'll be taking that to the Highlands through the Make It Smart Hub, supporting industry culture change through future skills programmes. I just want to briefly mention today on the Make It Smart Hub web platform, we have the matchmaking platform. This is a platform where all can register challenges and solutions and get connected with other individuals and companies to drive forward innovation. And I encourage you to visit the platform today at the Make It Smart Hub and register yourself as a challenge or solution provider. Today's webinar is part of the Innovation Centre's Diversity and Inclusion DIveIN initiative. Supported by Equate, this is a 12-month programme aimed at offering insight, support and guidance through events and training. The DIveIN initiative is aimed at helping the construction industry to develop and adopt diversity and inclusion programmes for today's workforce. Working jointly with CSIC, Sir Robert McAlpine and Equate, the Inclusive Value Industry Guide for the construction sector was launched last summer and has been born from the recognition that the construction industry continues to face challenges in recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce that is representative of wider society. This guide represents a collective experience and expertise of our team of industry and equality experts to present a clear business, legal and moral case for diversity within the industry. The Inclusive Value Project aims to deliver a free online assessment tool to support construction businesses identify ways in which they can adopt more inclusive work practices. Just a wee reminder of what protected characteristics are under the Equality Act 2010. These are age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy, maternity, race, religion, sex and sexual orientation. In line with the aims of the DIveIN initiative, today's webinar will focus on why we need to build a diverse and inclusive workforce, how companies large and small can do this, and the impact of COVID-19 on diversity and inclusion. Sometimes the protected characteristics are not available, and just to highlight this from my own background in terms of the sport that I follow, we have Kelly Brown, former Scotland captain and 64 caps for Scotland, is now the patron of the STAMA. And a quote from him was, "There is a real need for people to simply accept that some people stammer. A stammer is just that. It shouldn't stop anyone pursuing their career, whatever it is, or having a full and rewarding life." And likewise, something I found out after Kenny Logan had retired from international rugby, 220 points and over 50 caps. I was always brave enough on the rugby field, but never brave enough to talk about dyslexia. And whilst I don't follow Lorraine avidly in terms of her breakfast show, there is a really good clip about how Kenny Logan talks to his wife about how he dealt with dyslexia, and indeed how he didn't deal with dyslexia until he was an adult. And just to highlight here the real importance of never to underestimate role models. Starting from the left, Hazel Irvine retired from TV presenting after an extremely successful career. A young Ailey Barber on the left wrote to Hazel at the age of 14 asking for advice of how to get into broadcasting. Ailey herself is now a leading TV sports presenter in a traditionally male-dominated sector, and interestingly still has Hazel Irvine's reply and advice some 28 years later. Over the last decade, diversity has cemented its place in boardroom discussions across every industry. Companies have realised the benefits of having a diverse workforce, how it leads to broader knowledge and experiences across an organisation, and therefore culminates in better decision making. The property and construction sector, however, has largely struggled to keep up with other industries in improving its diversity. According to the latest ONS workforce statistics, women make up just 15% of the UK construction sector and only 2% of trade roles. And according to trade union GMB, it will take almost 200 years to achieve gender equality in the construction sector. However, if the UK is to meet its complex infrastructure challenges related to climate change, population growth and technical transformation, the sector needs to take steps towards recruiting, retaining a diverse workforce, particularly at a time when we're experiencing a growing skills gap, ageing workforce and uncertainty following COVID-19. The important and ongoing conversations around diversity have brought a fresh perspective and issues the construction industry has around attracting talent from ethnic and minority backgrounds. The UK workforce is more diverse than ever. For example, according to Diversity UK, ethnic minorities make up 12% of the working age population, but according to research, just 4% of construction managers in the UK are from ethnic minorities. Brexit has also had an impact, with approximately 30% of migrant construction workers, that equates to about 1.3 million workers in London, will be returning to the EU or already done so. The industry will need to seriously look at how it fills the gap, and will need to look at selection and recruitment from a wider pool going forward. The promotion of equality, diversity and inclusion is not only morally and culturally the right thing to do, but there is an impressive business case for making improvements in this area for your organisation. We know that diversity is a key driver of innovation. Research has shown this is to be the case time and time again, including a report from McKinsey that shows that gender diverse companies are 14% more likely to perform better. For gender diversity on executive teams, 21% more likely to outperform on profitability, and 27% more likely to have superior value creation. And ethnically diverse companies, 35% more likely to perform better. This is common sense too. The more varied a group's collective experience and backgrounds are, the wider their knowledge base will inevitably become. Diverse workforces are the key to innovation. I am delighted to be joined today by Michelle Reid of the Institute of Medicine, Leslie Laird of Equate Scotland, Kira Proctor of Proctor Group, and Bina Sharma of Novus Cleantech Limited. Now, I would invite them all to join me on screen and on mic, as I firmly believe a meeting hasn't started until everyone has spoken. So what I would like to do is just do a quick round the table, and perhaps start with Michelle, because you're first on screen. Michelle, could you tell me a bit about your business in 6 words? And then a little bit more, a couple of sentences on what motivates you at work to make a difference. So over to you, Michelle, 6 words, and then what motivates you to make a difference.
Okay, John, thanks. I'm the People and Operations Director at the Institute of Occupational Medicine, and we ensure people and workplace safety through scientific expertise. So there you go. And what motivates me is the desire to enable people to be their best selves at work. So being able to show them a path and create a culture that enables them to grow.
Excellent, thank you. And Kira?
My 6 words: unique products, unique performance, and unique people. What motivates me? Very interested in new innovations that help benefit the construction sector, and more specifically, really around people, progression, and culture. I'm very interested in.
Leslie? You're on mute, I think, Leslie.
Good afternoon, I'm Leslie Laird, I'm Director of Equate Scotland. Our organisation is focused on students, women and employers in academia in the STEM sector. And what motivates me every day and my team is that we see the huge opportunities that are there to grow the STEM sector in a more diverse way, and that's what makes us motivated since 2006.
Thank you, Leslie. And Bina?
Hi everyone, I'm Bina Sharma, Novus Cleantech, fairly recently launched company. We provide breakthrough solutions in sanitisation and disinfection. I guess what motivates me is working with a very wide and diverse range of people that come from all different sort of backgrounds and upbringings, bringing them all together under one roof, or at least with one purpose. I quite enjoy leading new technologies, particularly those that create new opportunities in the clean tech arena and definitely climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. So just before we start with the question and answer session, could we just play a short clip, please, Danielle?
I'm sure the European Space Agency will be looking for many of the attributes that astronauts have always needed. So things like being a good team worker, being what I would call just a regular, normal kind of person, you know, not very excitable and not very depressive, knowing when to lead, when to follow. It's, you know, you need to be very tolerant, very flexible, working with a small group of people in a confined environment. I think many of us know what that's like, isolated from perhaps the rest of the world. So there are some qualities that are going to be the same as has been needed for a long time. But I really hope what they're not going to do is just to look at what astronauts used to be like. You know, we have this, I think, this lasting impression, don't we, about astronauts being this very macho, right stuff kind of thing. And those very original astronauts, we get this from, you know, from the early Americans, of course, but we don't have a lot of diversity in all of its forms. And I think looking for somebody who is differently abled in terms of their body is just one of the many aspects of diversity that the European Space Agency is going to hopefully really open up. So let's not look at what astronauts perhaps should be like or what our impressions of astronauts are. Let's look at what the requirements for the job actually is right now. And that really is, you know, you need a diverse mix, because in any good team, there's people from a lot of different backgrounds.
Thank you. So that clip, although it's from a different sector, kind of resonates with the preparing for tomorrow's workforce. So I wonder if I could come to you first, Leslie. Listening to the clip from Helen Sharma, how does the construction sector prepare itself for today and tomorrow's workforce?
Well, I think first of all, I think we can all relate, I think, now to many of the sentiments that Helen just expressed, not least of which is probably being in confined spaces and by ourselves. But I think that is just a nod to the fact that our world changes and we can adapt with it. I go back to my days when I actually was responsible for talent management. And the phrase that we used to use then was, if you only ever fish in the same pond, you only ever catch the same fish. And if this last year has brought into sharp focus more than ever our need to adapt and change, then the challenges that actually face us coming out of recovery, out of COVID and forward into the new challenges that were there even before that around decarbonisation, climate change, green construction methodology, skill shortages, all of these challenges are still there. And now is actually, I think, a great time to take that pause and reflection on actually where is your business currently at as it comes through this recovery period? What is your business really about right now? And what are the challenges, but also what are the opportunities? What's going to be changing in terms of technology? And when you look at the skills and the profile that your organisation currently have, what does that look like when you're rolling that forward, looking at those opportunities and challenges? What skills are you going to need, particularly around the growth of digital skills and automation, which we can see coming to many parts of construction? I think it's also important to understand the demographics of your organisation. Many construction companies have a population over 50, where many are about to retire. So how are you planning and thinking about not just replacing the people that go, but thinking about the skill set that you're going to need to actually grow and sustain your business going forward? That sustainability aspect is increasingly important. And the third lens that I think organisations need to consider is the culture and the environment. You know, we talk about what kind of culture we have and how do we attract people to our business. And what I would say about culture is it's great having words on a page and having that sentiment about what your aims and your intentions are. But it's about the leadership that you show in the lived experience, the day-to-day experiences that happen in the workplace, on the construction site, what's tolerated and what's not, and what's seen to, to get supported. And I think these are the things that increasingly, people who are working in a whole variety of industries are making very different judgment choices about what is important to them in the workplace. So not only are you going to be fighting to attract the skills that you need, You also need to consider whether the environment you're creating is one that the workforce that you need to recruit in the future will want to engage with. So there's a number of aspects there that I think are really important right now as we come through this COVID period, and this is a good time, I think, to take pause and reflection on those aspects. John, you're on mute.
John, you're on mute.
Feedback and I went on mute there, sorry. So if I can go to you next, Kira, I mean, reflecting on what Leslie's been talking about there, how have you seen maybe how Procter Group has changed in terms of how it analyses skills maybe from 10 years ago to now and then going forward?
Oh, good question. Well, I mean, I think even if I just go back the past year as to how we analyze the skill sets of our employees and the value they bring to the business, it really has opened, opened our eyes a little bit, because, the customer facing and the front, I mean, we're a technical sales organization, and often the front facing individuals in your business are the type of personalities that kind of generate or command the most attention. And I mean that in a good way. So not negative, and often the support functions are, seen as less critical. So I think in terms of actually analysing and really understanding the value of staff, the last year and the COVID situation that we've been placed in has allowed a lot more kind of cross-fertilization between departments, people stepping in, helping each other in each other's jobs, and that's kind of allowed us to see the real worth and kind of a lot of the background work. So, for example, when COVID hit, we had to furlough a lot of staff because of our turnover dropped significantly in April, but we kept on the whole marketing team and started doing these webinars, etc. And they were kind of almost setting the whole tone for the organisation in terms of all pulling together to achieve something. And it was nice to see the actual business and support generated for the brand and recognising that, whereas historically they would be a bit more in the background. So I think that I feel the last year has given us an opportunity to really get to know a lot of different of our employees across different sectors, and as a business we are continually investing in our staff and making sure that they have the right training, and this is something more historical than the past year. So actually, again, I don't want to make this all about COVID, but a lot of things came to the forefront when that hit, how quickly we were able to evolve into the home working situation, how quickly people were actually well enough supported to be able to make such a change in their working behaviour. I think is testament really to how we as a business have treated and trained them over the past 5 to 10 years. So when something all becomes very critical and there's a crisis, I think the long-term work really starts to pay off when people come together. I hope that answers your question, John.
Yeah, no, that's great, thank you. And if I could maybe just come to you now, Michelle, in terms of why we need to build a diverse workforce, in terms of developing it again from yesterday's and for today's, what have you seen from the market and industry in terms of a shift?
I think from my perspective, I've got very similar challenges and opinions to Leslie and Kira there. I mean, we've got an ageing population. We're not construction. We are academia, research, site engineering type roles, and 2/3 of our organisation will be retired over the course of the next kind of 2 to 5 years. And I've only been here for 3 years, so that's something that we've been working on very heavily. And when COVID hit for us, we had a similar experience to Kira, but it was more our IT function that really came to the fore, because we were very, very quickly and easily able to have people working at home completely. Even traditional areas that wouldn't have worked or wouldn't been allowed to work from home were able to do that really quickly, easily, simply. And actually we were able to upskill people prior to the pandemic, but also throughout as well. So actually escalating some of our strategic intent. So part of our strategy was about enabling digitalisation, automation of processes, upskilling people, rather than resources being used in, I guess you would call them old school resource heavy functions. So our intention was never to kind of reduced massively our workforce. We unfortunately had to make a couple of redundancies, but a very, very small population, less than 1%. And we've been able to kind of move forward, and we've got people who are in their 50s are now training on marketing skills, for example. So we've taken advantage of some of the apprenticeship frameworks that are out there. We've got new talent coming in who are learning from people who are moving to retirement, and we're moving their roles into more mentors and reverse mentoring, these sort of things. So diversity is a huge thing, and if we don't change, then our organisation will effectively be gone. It won't be there, and we've been there for 50 years. And a lot of people have been there for a good chunk of that time. So for us, it's absolutely key, particularly around skills development growth, because these kind of skills are not grown on trees, but we can work to grow our own and work with other organisations to do that internally and externally.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if I could just ask, Bina, from an early stage business point of view, what do you see in terms of where you might find talent to support your business going forward in the future?
That's a good question, actually. It's not the easiest one to tackle, to be honest, and it's particularly as a new business. I mean, this isn't the first venture that I've been involved in, but that is a big part of what I do is going out there and finding the kind of talent that focuses on the kind of technologies that we work on. And I guess there are lots and lots of misconceptions out there about how you find that talent pool and and whether or not that talent pool is in any which way diverse or represents the community that we're looking at. But I guess over the years, things have changed, and we're in a position now that what we tend to focus more on is the talent, the experiences, what we find is that the further out we cast our net, we find that we get more of a diverse, more varied experiences. We also find that it deepens and enhances the quality of our workforce. I'm sure Leslie will agree with that. But I think there are strategies that can be put into place, and we've put quite a lot of strategies in place to achieve that more diverse and inclusive workforce. But these need to be completely ingrained in how you hire, how you retain, in your company culture, and how an organisation and its employees operate and how they work together. Because much of what we do is innovation, so we're constantly looking for new ways to do things, new challenges. It's important that the people that we do bring to the talent pool represents that, regardless of what background they come from. And actually, the more diverse that background, the more experiences we can bring into the business, and the more that we can start challenging the things that are the norm, because that's a big part of what we do. We challenge the norm. And by bringing in diverse people, that allows us to challenge and push those barriers even more. And I think that's essential to how we start our business to go. And the beauty of being a startup is that you can set things the way that you want them from the start. It's much harder coming into an organisation that has an ingrained culture in the way that they do things, and changing those behaviours, those mentalities, whether it's individuals or teams, the way that they traditionally work together. That's much, much harder to do. Certainly with a new company, we set the culture, and anybody who comes in is more likely to conform with the culture that is existing as a new person, because let's face it, who doesn't want to fit in, So whatever the culture is set up in the company, they will just come in, and the idea is that they will fit in as whatever is the behavioural norm.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point that trying to change the supertanker is a bigger challenge than changing a smaller vessel. Even today, I noticed there's a supertanker stuck in the Suez Canal at 90 degrees, so that's going to cause a few problems. But that point about where you've got ingrained workplace culture in an established business is perhaps more difficult to change in a more nimble early stage business, where you can define right at the very beginning what you want the workplace culture to be. So we're just going to take a slight pause there. We're going to go to the first poll. If I can ask Danielle to load the first poll. So we should see the results just on screen there, and it's really a split decision. It's an equal proportion of people believing that it should be leadership from government and making diversity and inclusion a board priority, leadership from SMEs, and recruiting and retaining a workforce that represents society. Thank you, Danielle. So if I could just ask a question, I'll go to Michelle first. About I talked in my opening remarks about the demand for skills in the construction sector, and there's going to be a large number of construction workers leaving the UK to go back to Europe, and we know that the construction sector is set to grow by 4.3% per annum. And we know that the pool of talent available is increasingly diverse, but employers are significantly reducing their talent pool by simply going to the same pool every time, picking like-minded and like people. I wonder what is the scale of the opportunity for active targeting and active marketing for new entrants, late returners, or career changers?
I think the scale and the opportunity is massive. I mean, especially today with all the different tools and opportunities that are available to target different groups as well. But it does need careful planning. So, I loved Leslie's quip at the beginning there about if you fish in the same pool, you're going to get the same all the time, but that pool is getting smaller and smaller. So, you really have to, but you have to look at your organisation as it stands just now. Where are you? Where do you want to get to? What kind of skills are you looking for? And actually then look at the options and the opportunities that are available externally and start engaging with them now, because these things are not overnight fixes. There's no silver bullet. It takes effort and it takes strategic intent as well. So, there are things like career transition services where you can go and engage with them. You can specifically target. You can do that virtually, online. You can do that in person when we're allowed, obviously, and also different apprenticeship programs and different levels, outreach programs for schools and colleges, long-term unemployed, career changers, all of these kind of things. So, the pool doesn't have to be as small as we think it is. It's just about opening your mind to different skills, experiences, and also being honest about what skills you can train and grow yourself internally, what support or even funding is out there. Scottish Enterprise is a great example of funding that's available for organisations to try and help them. So even if you don't have all the answers, it's actually going and learning from other people in other industries, because the problems that the construction industry may feel it has are everywhere else as well. So, I'm not in the construction industry, but I've got the same challenges. Kira will have the same, Bina will have some of the same, Leslie will have some of the same in other industries. So learning from each other and taking the blinkers off and just being curious about what other people are doing as well can pay dividends. So hopefully that answers your question, but I personally believe that the scale and the opportunity is massive. It's just about taking that first step to understand and plan.
And we see there's obviously significant challenges in the oil and gas sector, particularly in the northeast. Where do you see the opportunities for these transferable skills, say from the oil and gas sector, to come into construction or to come into green tech and the built environment?
I think the reality is that the skills are transferable, so it might not be the same technical skill, but the analytical thinking, the logical approach, the way of working, the service mindset, the project processes, any of those kind of things are all transferable. The specific technical stuff that you do in your organisation can be trained, particularly the systems or the processes that you specifically use. And yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not underplaying specific skill sets that are grown through university or massive amount of experience, those kind of things, but they can be passed on to others as well. And I think personally, in my view, having someone who is passionate, interested, really wants to kind of grow, wants to soak up knowledge and expertise, that's fundamental against technical skill, because if someone doesn't have the right behaviours or the right mindset, it doesn't matter what technical skills they've got, ultimately they may well be a problem for your business and might not help you grow, might not bring that innovation and creativity. And imagine bringing someone new into your business that has the right mindset, the right skill set, the right mindset, and some of the experience that they can bring in, actually asking questions and bringing other ideas. Well, there's your innovation right there.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. And Kira, what does the Proctor Group, or what's your view on looking in these different pools, you know, career changers, career changers, late returners? Is that something you actively seek?
We don't really have a policy, to be honest, when it comes to that. I mean, actually, in terms of our employment numbers, I think currently around 65% went to the local high school, believe it or not. Some with further education, some with not. So it's all quite local. And of course, now we do have a national sales force and people dotted around the world. So we don't really have a policy other than a very open one. To be honest, John, we, as Michelle pointed out, you know, you don't know what you're going to get if you don't test different waters. It is quite difficult when recruiting, because I think recruitment agents and people that, you know, do apply for roles in your organisation are often from the same area of expertise, because they're looking to keep within that sector. So we actually find it quite challenging to find, you know, to reach out and find others out with our you know, kind of circle of, you know, in terms of the circles that we know people are moving in, relevant to the construction sector. But we certainly wouldn't be adverse to looking out with that. Probably could do with a bit of help, and we have a word with some of these ladies afterwards and see how we can extend it a bit. I'm interested in it.
Okay. Leslie and Bina, you're welcome to join or contribute to this segment if you like.
Well, I think one of the key things that we know is that there's huge investment going to be in the construction sector as a result of the investment in the recovery plan. We also know already that 1.3 million Europeans have already left the UK. And if you think about how labour in the construction sector can and does move around, then it's really important for, I think, organisations to be clear about what their proposition is and what talent and skills they need, because there is going to be undoubtedly competition for those skills. And I think being clear about your proposition right now and taking that time, as I mentioned earlier, to really think about what are the skills that you need. If I give an example of that, I worked in the semiconductor industry, so responsible for talent and recruitment there. And we were struggling to get semiconductor technicians. But we decided to take a different approach, and we ran two things. We ran mature apprenticeship schemes to attract basically from people from other industries who, just as Michelle had said, had attributes that could potentially read across. And it comes back to Helen's video when she talked about what is the job that you actually need that person to do? What are the kind of skill sets that sit around that? And you can make an assessment about trainability. Are those skills that they might have done in one sector just as transferable to another? And the other thing that we did was we actually targeted in the areas that I recruited. We lived in a lot of mining communities, and a lot of the mines had closed, and we had a lot of mining engineers. So they had the mindset of engineering, but in a different environment. They were coming from a very dark mine to a clean room environment, but therefore they understood absolutely the need for health and safety, following procedures. The clean environment was one that had very strict protocols, just as it did in the mines. And they had the engineering mindset, not for semiconductors, but that was trainable. And therefore, I guess I always ask businesses to think about, well, what's the job you really want that person to do? What is the skills that's going to be needed? And don't think about who you might know that fits it. That's the wrong place to start, because that really just narrows your options. And you miss the opportunity, I think, when you're hiring externally. It's a terrific opportunity to freshen your bench, if you want to use a football analogy, to kind of lift, the level of challenge and thinking in your team. And when you're going to make that investment in hiring externally, who doesn't want to improve your bench Who doesn't want to have, your business getting an advantage by perhaps bringing in, another star player who can actually take your business onto that next level. So it's a great opportunity, I think, right now to just turn the problem on its head, look at it a little bit differently, and just see what you might find. It might be quite surprising for you and your business.
Thank you. Bina? Mute.
I mean, I agree with am I still on?
No.
I haven't really got much more to add on that. I mean, Michelle, Kieran, Leslie pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's one of these things that, as Leslie said, looking at things differently, thinking about things differently. Sometimes it's quite easy to say, but it's actually a lot harder to do, particularly when you've got people in your whether it's your management team, whether it's your cultural aspect in your actual organisation. And that change needs to happen, and that change, I don't feel that change has fully yet happened. And there may be individuals like myself, like Leslie, like Kira, Michelle, that are all on the same page with this. But unfortunately, quite often we are up against it when there are people who are not on the same page, and people who have been doing things a very long way, the same way for a very long way, and they don't feel that anything needs to change because, well, nothing's gone wrong yet. So we've been doing all right so far. And it's a little bit like not being able to quite see what potential is out there if they could just broaden their horizons and broaden their thinking a little. So a big part of my job is actually to convince people that the change is needed and that the change can be a good thing. And that's where I think the biggest challenge comes in, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for that. If I could just quickly ask, we're going to go to the next poll shortly, but I just want to ask Kira a question on authentic behaviour and how important do you believe setting the appropriate behaviours to ensure you're authentic is key to culture change. And we've spoken before about Procter Group and their mindfulness march. So I wonder if you could just talk around that subject just for a wee bit.
Sure. Well, I'm a strong believer that, behavior in your organization should be set from the top. So in terms of, being authentic, I mean, it's essentially the opposite to having a facade, building a facade. It's just really about being your true self. And what I find is by setting, the kind of bar in terms of, it is acceptable to be a bit vulnerable, it is entirely acceptable to be yourself. I find that then kind of waterfalls throughout the rest of the business from management downwards. So you actually by default create an environment where, people are more open. There's certainly more innovation because no idea is a silly idea. People are more communicative when they feel that they have access to everyone, every single level in the business, and I think that helps you build trust not only in yourself but also in your business and in your brand. So as I feel you're an authentic leader, then not only do your employees tend to follow you and feel more comfortable and feel more trusting, then that can actually be reflected on the brand. So if I was to describe the Procter Group brand in the construction sector, I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I'd be disappointed if people didn't describe it as trusted, honest, and open, helpful, all the things that come with the type of individuals that we should be. And I also think it helps people individually. So if I feel I'm being authentic and honest with myself, then it does, kind of allow you to have a greater sense of well-being because you're not pretending to be something that you're not. Better, self-satisfaction, work satisfaction, because that you're just being authentic. And what we've tried to do in March, and we'll be extending this on, is just give people the different platforms and the right amount of support where they can communicate with their colleagues. So we have this whole feature around checking in with people, not checking up on people. So especially with the new challenges of home working, we don't want our staff to feel like they're not trusted, because that's not the case. We all know our staff can do an extremely good job working and be trusted to do so from their homes, which is where we all are at the moment. However, we don't want them to feel isolated. So through different technical channels, we've had different speakers coming in on the different weeks to talk about things like mindfulness, work-life balance, all these different topics, and it's actually just created a huge flurry of communication so that people actually feel you know, that communication is, you know, it's a great thing, it's a good thing, and it's not a waste of time. You know, the days of being deemed to be lazy if you're having a chat to someone are gone. You know, we as leaders, we have to have patience and the encouragement to say to people, make sure that you're taking time for yourself to do these things.
That's great, thank you very much. I suppose that way it becomes more participative rather than a tick box exercise as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're just going to go to the second poll. If I could ask Danielle to load up the poll, there it is. Oh, and overwhelmingly, a more diverse construction workforce could be built through leadership, culture, and role models, and well, basically leadership, culture, and role models. And that takes me nicely to my next question. We've got a couple from the audience that we'll get to shortly. The importance of role models and role models in STEM. What more can we do to increase the visibility of women in technical roles? The more likely a school leaver will consider the built environment to be a viable career path. How important are visible role models to inspire current and upcoming generations? Maybe I could go to Leslie first on this.
Well, I think this is a really important aspect, and it's not just about in STEM. I think it's about in everything, but in the STEM sector in particular, what people tell us is it's very hard to be what you can't see. And if we want to attract a more diverse workforce, then there has to be visible presence of that at every level of the organisation. And I don't mean that in a tokenism sense. I think it has to be meaningful. I think it has to be also set alongside the changes in the culture that not only attract more diverse people, but allows you to retain those people in your organisation. You really do need to understand that cultural mix. And as I said right at the start, it's a bit like that iceberg. You can have all the stuff that looks glossy and great at the, you know, above the waterline, but it's what happens underneath that really is important. So what's tolerated, what language is tolerated, how are people spoken to in meetings, how are people treated, and what about the informal sort of culture that's not, you know, happens when perhaps the leader isn't there, when incidences are highlighted, how is that addressed and called out? You know, we've seen a lot of discussion about the issues that women face in terms of societal issues, and I think it's recognising that it's important for good leadership and to have good men being good leaders in organisations if they want to bring in more diverse distribution of talent into the STEM sector, and encouraging and nurturing that, and being seen to really be welcoming and creating the environment that supports that. And that always doesn't mean about spending a lot of money. It doesn't always mean about you know, huge efforts, but it is about regular behaviour. It's about that new way of looking at the world and making that effort just to first of all, educate yourself about what's appropriate and what's not, and to make sure that that's articulated and that you are the role model of that behaviour in your organisation. So when you do bring other people in, they feel that that environment is a welcoming one. They feel that that environment, I think as Kira said, is an authentic one, and it's not just they've read it on the booklet, but in the reality is it's something different. So I think it is important to get role models, and certainly to have multiple role models. And if you are recruiting, then and bringing someone in who is not perhaps like someone that you've had in your organisation before, then think about what do you need to help make sure and support that person, that they feel welcomed and that they feel they would want to contribute positively in your organisation, that they'll thrive and that they'll want to stay. And more importantly, they'll want to go and tell others about what a good organisation you are to work for.
Indeed, it's a phrase that you used with me earlier, was if you can't see it, you can't be it. So I absolutely recognise, and so does Women's Enterprise Scotland and a whole variety of other groups, the importance of role models in terms of gender equality. I wonder if I could just ask Bina the first question from the audience. What does the term diversity mean to you? What are the common misconceptions people have about diversity, and how can we combat these misconceptions, especially in your field?
Thanks. Yeah, great questions, actually. I think diversity, sometimes what we mean by diversity can sometimes be very personal to each individual, but for me, I guess it means that no two people are the same, and it's understanding that no two people are the same. It's also all about recognizing our individual differences, and these could be in race, they could be in gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, etc., as you mentioned before, John. And along with much more, you know, diversity exists when you go above and beyond being aware of these differences or accepting of these differences to the point of actually actively including people who are different from you. It's about learning from our difference to make the whole community a better place. You know, I quite often use the term belonging. You know, when do you know it? And it's about belonging, you know, and people use that word very differently, but the way I see it is that there is a difference, and if you're, you know, part of that belonging is you could be quite comfortable going to a company Christmas party, but actually belonging is when you can go onto that dance floor on your own and feel comfortable to dance. To me, that's belonging, not just going along to the Christmas party. With regards to some of the misconceptions, there are loads and loads of misconceptions around there, particularly in the workforce. And I guess one of those is, you know, the term diversity and inclusion being what we call a fad or the fashionable thing at the moment. And it can be seen by some organisations as something that we need to be seen to be doing, we need to be seen to be actively taking part in. We need to be doing something about it so that it doesn't appear that we're behind with the times or these things don't concern us. And one of the misconceptions that come with that is that this is not an issue for us, this is not an issue for the management team or for the people that work for us, but it's an issue for HR. It's a HR issue. That's something that HR deal with. And quite often in organisations, you'll see that it falls under the barrier of HR because that's what it's seen to be. And as soon as you place something under the barrier of HR, it almost takes it away as being the responsibility of the other people in the organisation. So that's quite one of the main misconceptions about diversity, and it being just that fad that needs to be, we need to tick that box. But in order to appear progressive, some companies may, for example, you know, they may, for example, place people from diverse backgrounds in their roles just for the sake of placing these people being diverse. I mean, there are ways in which we can combat it, and we've spoken, you know, all of us have spoken about the ways in which we do it in our own organisations. But one of the biggest things that we need to do, one of the main things that we need to do is we need to challenge those misconceptions. And quite often we're not challenging them enough. In fact, the people that are challenging them are the people who are often, it's those diverse people, the people that feel that they have got something to say or need to say something because they've been treated a certain way or not been treated a certain way or not be seen as other people in the organisation. But it shouldn't be these people that are coming forward. It shouldn't be the likes of me as a female or me as a person of a different race in the construction industry coming forward and saying, hey, look, you know, I've got an issue with this and this is how I've been treated. And what I am seeing more and more of is you know, some of this treatment hasn't gone away, and it is still there. It is still apparent in our everyday. Particularly for myself, I see it in my everyday. But actually what I'm finding more and more of, as opposed to 20, 25 years ago when I first joined the oil and gas industry in construction, you know, I almost felt like it was wrong for me to see that being treated this way was wrong because I was in the minority and it wasn't normal. And you almost get to a stage where you start to accept that this is the norm, even though you know it's not. But now what I'm finding is more often than not, actually something might be said to me, whether it's directly or indirectly, but it will be my male counterpart that picks up on it as opposed to me, because I've been through this industry and I've seen, you know, I've been treated a certain way, you almost become accepting of it. And it's other people now that are picking up and saying, hey, hold on a second, that's not okay. So the challenges shouldn't be coming from people like me or people that feel that we've been excluded for whatever reason. It actually should be coming from other people saying it's not acceptable. And that is happening. I'm seeing more and more of that.
Absolutely agree. If I could just ask, go to another question to Michelle. How can you encourage your business to think differently when recruiting for more diverse talent for the future?
Well, it's interesting because that was exactly my story when I joined IOM 3 years ago, and I was told by a member of the management board it's impossible to recruit for IOM, so good luck with that, love. That wasn't the exact term that was used, I'm paraphrasing. But I said, right, challenge accepted. Let's see what we can do. So essentially it was about campaigning for the opportunity to pass or fail, if you like. So taking a vacancy that was there and talking to the recruiting manager and the line manager and say, let me walk this journey with you, let me understand with you what that role actually entails, what's involved in that. Let's look at some other candidates. You know, what cost is it to the business? It's some of your time to meet some new people. Let's have a look at that. And actually targeting some of the champions. So one of the lessons I learned was not to waste time over the naysayers and those who were not for the journey. So those that wanted it to remain the same, frightened of change, you know, resistant to whatever reason behind. But actually spend my time with the people who were all for it and who actually wanted to be heard or wanted to be involved in that new journey. So the reality was that we were then able to bring new talent into the organisation and look at their onboarding process so that they were looked after, they felt welcome, they felt that they had belonging, and just kind of role modelling that really and sharing those stories, because what I find is that it's stories from people who have been through that journey with your organisation or who have grown or have had a career that will attract other people in. And, you know, going back to Leslie's points about role modelling, you know, if you've got people in your organisation who have succeeded, then showcase them, tell their story on a video, or get them to come and talk to other people about and sell what that is to other people as well. So challenge accepted, using your champions in your organisations and having a go is all I can say about that.
Okay, thank you. We are rapidly running out of time, and but we can run over slightly. But what I would just like to do is go to the third and final poll. So if Danielle can load that up. Okay, just let me move that over there. So, areas of future engagement, building a culture of diverse workforce. Thankfully, that's what we've been talking about today. Gender identity and equal pay is also another leading topic. So thank you all who contributed to the polls. I just want, what's proposed time? We've got a few more minutes, but I would just like to go round the panel one last time and fast forward 30 years. What will the construction sector look like in terms of culture change or workplace culture, either for the sector or your workplace? What will it look like in 30 years' time? 30 seconds each. Michelle.
I knew you were going to come to me first. So actually, I've taken it a different way, really. I think for me, and a construction sector, but also for our organisation, would be very much an overhauled education system. So, you know, even today, we're still training our kids and our young talent in skills that are no longer relevant for us or are very, very quickly going out of date. So I would like to think as organisations, we work much more effectively with the education systems, with government, whoever that may be, to really target the new talent coming into the workplace and being able to give them a space to grow and excel in whatever career they want, regardless of who they are and where they come from.
Thank you. Kira?
Good question. I think, what do I think? Goodness, I mean, the noted changes in modern methods of construction, modular house building, you know, we've seen a huge change even in the last 2 to 3 years, which we're involved heavily in as a company. So again, I mean, I went on a learning journey to Japan, and it feels like you're going into the future when you go around some of these factories. I mean, they are dealing with their housing deficit in a way I've just never seen before. I mean, whether we'd want that in the UK in terms of, you know, robots rather than humans, I don't see it going quite to that. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think I've been really surprised and pleasantly surprised at that, in how the construction sector has reacted to the COVID crisis, how they've worked through it, how, again, they're not just doing the same things. We're now doing things differently than we were a year ago. So I think we're taking strides ahead in terms of delivering what we need to, in terms of our housing and the ways we're going about it. So I just think that will continue.
Thank you. We'll go to Leslie. So what will it look like in 30 years, Leslie? Will we have a more diverse workforce? Will we have achieved better diversity and inclusion?
Well, I think if we want to have a thriving and successful construction sector going forward, the answer to that has to be yes. I think if you look at, just as Kira has outlined, what are the developments that are happening elsewhere in construction? What's the global picture? What's the trends that are happening? And how is your business going to adapt and compete in that environment? That requires diversity of thinking, diversity of attitude and mindset. And if you're going to be successful, then it does require you to get into that bigger pool and to get that talent, especially before anyone else gets it before you. So if you want your business to be here in 30 years' time, now is a good time to start that journey of building that more inclusive workforce, so that your business definitely will be thriving in 30 years' time.
And indeed isn't left behind.
Bina,
what will you 30 years, the construction sector?
Yeah, I think all of the ladies above me have pretty much said what needed to be said. I agree with each and every one of them. So they've made my job a lot easier. My only one thing for what I would like to see in 30 years' time is that we are no longer having these types of discussions, that we are no longer having to talk about what these kind of topics. You know, they shouldn't even be on the agenda, really, in the nicest possible way. They shouldn't be on the agenda, because if, as far as I'm concerned, if they're on the agenda, still got a problem. So that would be the only one thing for me, is that in 30 years' time, it wouldn't even be part of the discussion. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. I do feel that we could have had a 2-hour webinar today, and we may well have to revisit this another time. But finally, from me, the next webinar in the series is yet to be defined, but those on the webinar today will get an invite to the next webinar in May. The Make It Smart Hub for Construction and Manufacturing SMEs in the Highlands and Islands is part funded by the 2014-2020 European Structural Investment Fund, and support from Highlands and Islands Enterprise, Scottish Enterprise and the Scottish Government is gratefully acknowledged. Thank you to all my contributors today, Bina, Kira, Leslie and Michelle. Thank you so much for giving up your time. Thank you for attending this webinar, the audience, and please complete the feedback, as we do appreciate your views. So let's get connected, get solutions focused, and let's build a bright future for the construction and manufacturing sectors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John.